I was so completely naive, and it's hard for me not to hate myself for how naive I was because I didn't grow up easy, y'all. I grew up really freaking hard in a really bad situation and ended up in a group home and ended up aging out of foster care, like in a horrific situation. And yet, when he took me, I had so much to learn about life, and he took that from me and he locked me, like, while my frontal lobe was not all the way developed, locked me in a home for years and in a manner in which I couldn't even think for myself. Like, I didn't, somebody asked, like, well, didn't you get mail? Ma'am, no. Mail who? I didn't get anything. I wasn't even allowed to order something that would have my name on it. Like, no, like nothing. There was nothing that I did. I remember when my Arizona driver's license went to expire and I wanted a Nevada one so so badly. And he was like adamant against it. And finally, I ended up making an appointment at the DMV and I said, you take me or I'm walking. And he took me and he was shaking because the thought of me having any sort of like updated information made him want to die. It made him want to die. And like, as much as I rebelled as hard as I could while I was with him, he really would smash me down. I mean, just smash me down. And so I mental wherewithal of like probably like the understanding of life that I came out of there with was probably that of like a, I don't know, like my maturity level. That's very different. I was very mature, but like my understanding of situations and how things worked, he knocked me back to probably like a 13-year-old. Like, as embarrassing as that is to say, y'all, he knocked me back mentally on like how the world turned to like a 13-year-old. And I'm a very intelligent person, but he took that from me. He took everything from me. And so he tells me, like, you're going to have to let me see the kids. I didn't want my kids to be traumatized by the police again when the police showed up and had to, like, argue back and forth between who was going to see my kids. And so I was like, all right, you can come to the hotel and get them. One of the biggest mistakes of my life, if not the biggest mistake of my life, was letting that happen. And I try to forgive myself, but it's very hard. So he came to the hotel and he got the kids. And so when he came, I remember vividly, this man came, he came to the hotel, he started snapping pictures really, really quick. And I knew what it was for. I knew it was to blackmail me later. Like, I'm going to tell everyone you let me come to the hotel. And it wasn't because I wanted him to come there. It was because I wanted my kids to be safe. And I didn't know how to make them be safe if the police were going to argue and like I was trying my best to make the decisions that I thought were going to keep me and my kids safe. And I thought if I gave him a little bit of what he wanted, that he would leave us alone. And the thing about a psychopath is they don't leave you alone. They'll never leave you alone. So he had no intention of leaving me alone. But yet I tried it. And so he came and he got the kids. And he had the kids. He took them and he promised to give them back at the end of the day. And so I'm sitting on the hotel bed and I'm like waiting, and they had just left maybe like 20 minutes ago, and my heart is like pounding, and I'm like telling myself like it's gonna be okay, your babies are gonna be back to you soon, and he's gonna be happy, and he's gonna go back home, and it's all gonna be okay. And then I get a phone call from him, and he is screaming at me, and caveat to the story, he had actually met somebody in North Carolina. He went on Craigslist, I think, and met a man, because my ex can switch back and forth from men to women whenever he feels the need based upon what he needs from whoever. So he met this guy on Craigslist. He told me that he had a friend from a church out here that he knew in North Carolina, and that's who he was going to stay with. Well, he was actually staying with somebody who had a Craigslist out looking for a live-in partner sex situation, right? I didn't know that. I thought it was like a church friend that he had met. And so his church friend had let him use his car. And so he has my kids, and it's 20 minutes later, and he calls screaming, you fucking whore. And I was like, what? And he's like, how dare you have my kids around another man? I'm like, I don't know what are you talking about? And he was talking about this really nice guy that had come and helped build a table for me and my kids, had bought the table for me and my kids and built it because he didn't want us sitting on the floor to eat. And he'd always protected my kids, like, since he met them, and he was very kind to them, but we were just friends, and he was like, there was nothing. I was very traumatized, and this guy was just one of the single guys in the ward who was very, very kind and very helpful. But he was that way to everybody. And he's like, you whore. And I'm crying. And I can hear my kids screaming in the background, Mom, help us. And I was like, where are you? Where are you? And he was like, I can't tell you where I am. I don't know where the fuck I am. I don't know where you brought us. And I was like, if you tell me where you are, if you just stop and you just pull over, I'll come and I'll get them. It's gonna be okay. Everything's gonna be okay. And he tells me, and I will never forget these words. He tells me, you will never see your babies again. You know why? I want you to hurt like I hurt. I want you to hurt like I hurt. And I could not breathe. I was so convinced he was going to drive my babies into the river. I'm to this day shocked that he didn't. And I started sobbing. And I said, please, I'll give you anything you want. You just please bring me my babies back. Please bring me my babies back. And he was like, no, click. And I sat there paralyzed, crying. Why didn't you call the police, Andre? Because I was terrified of the police. Why didn't you tell somebody from the church, Andre? Because I was terrified that I had done something wrong. I had given him my kids, and now I fucked everything up, and now he's going to kill them, and this is going to be my fault. Everything is my fault. I did everything wrong. It's my fault. And so I just sat there like sobbing in a ball, sobbing on the hotel bed, just saying, God, I'm so sorry I did this. I'm so sorry I messed everything up. I'm such a bad mom, over and over and over and over. And then finally, a couple hours later, he calls and he says, I'm bringing the kids back to you. And my heart just like, what? And I remember running downstairs. He brought them back to the hotel. I brought them up. They were like, we went to go get ice cream. And I was like, oh, good. I mean, I was messed up, y'all. And that's when I vowed I would never hand to my kids again, ever, without a court order. Never again. Absolutely not. So I told him that. I said, you will never touch my kids again unless you literally have the police with you and you literally have a court order. So what does he do? What does he do, you ask? Well, he goes and gets a lawyer. Who's going to represent this man, you ask? The scum of the universe. So he goes and he gets a lawyer. And this lawyer like talks to my church and basically says like, hey, like we need to figure something out so he's able to see the kids while he's here, blah, 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 blah. And the church is trying to work with church legal and also the lawyer that he hired, who probably wasn't even a lawyer. It was honestly probably just Carl with a different personality. And they're trying to figure everything out. And basically they tell me like, okay, he can see the kids like at his church friend's house. Again, his sex partner's house, but I didn't know that. They weren't like an actual partnership, guys. It was like some like really weird arrangement that this older guy had with him. I don't know. And so he would take my kids over there for like 2 days at a time and then bring them back to me. And that happened maybe 3 times. And every time he took my kids, he returned them so sick. Like my boys are asthmatics. They would come back with like croup and an asthma flare, and they would be so sick, and they would reek of cigarettes. They would be filthy, and they would be covered in like bruises. And I would ask them what happened, and they would just say that dad let them do whatever they wanted to do while they were with him. And they were on a farm, and they like literally just, he like let them run feral. There were horses, there were everything, and he just let them run feral. And my boys were little, but they were very rough, and so I tried very carefully to make sure that they didn't play too rough, because my boys didn't know like what too rough was. And so, but he didn't stop anything. And so there was a point at which they literally came home with one of their teeth knocked out. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to make anything better. And I'm just trying to go through the motions. So we had about 3 visits like that.